Hello, D-Gens. Welcome to Degenerate Takes. I, of course, am the perfect one, AJ. Happy Monday, March 23rd, 2026. Hope you're having a great start to your week. I know I am. We've got a lot to talk about today. March Madness. First two rounds wrapped up. We'll dive into the big storylines there, along with prediction markets. Not particularly having a great day, and it doesn't seem like they're going to have a particularly long future. But we'll get to all of that and more. Before I go any further, though, do just want to take a moment. Shout out to everyone here on Rumble, over on YouTube, however you're listening, however you're watching. Thank you all. And if you like what we're cooking, please hit those like buttons, hit the follow buttons. Does help us out a lot more than you know. But let's not play games. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. Let's start with March Madness, okay? Because I've heard a lot. I've read a lot. I've seen a lot of what do I want to call it? Criticisms. Let's start with that. I've seen a lot of criticisms of March Madness. People saying, oh, well, this tournament isn't as good as other ones. Oh, well, look at the favorites all winning on Friday and most of Saturday. Oh, and look at no Cinderellas really coming out of the woodworks or anything like that. Oh, and look at. And as someone, and I know I'm not the only one, but as someone who watched every single second of basketball over those last 4 days, I've got to say this has been a fine tournament. This is, I would dare push that this has been a very good tournament, a great tournament. I mean, what really does make a good tournament? And I guess that's all my preference. You know what I mean? Is it your school going deep? Is it the Cinderella story that you're looking for? Is it just having great games back to back to back to back with upsets, potential upsets? It's all in what is your cup of tea. And usually March Madness especially is good at kind of filling in everyone's cup of tea. And you start to look at where we're at with the Sweet 16. You start to look at where the Elite 8 is heading. And yes, it is relatively chalky. And as Noah and I talked about going into this, it was looking like it was going to be pretty chalk. Last year was extremely chalk, if we've seen it. And, you know, when you're going into a year where Texas at 11, yes, the Longhorns, UT, Texas is sitting there at 11, and then Tennessee at 6, and those are kind of your two quote-unquote big Cinderella stories going into the Sweet 16 and forward. I understand where some of the frustration is. I understand where, you know, some of the criticisms are coming from, and how maybe some people can, you know, go down the path of, well, it's all NIL's fault. NIL is ruining college basketball. NIL is ruining college sports, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I find that argument interesting. I find that argument very interesting because I just want to go ahead and look at the top 11, just the top 11 teams that in NIL spending for this season in college basketball. You're looking at Kentucky, number 1 at $20 million. They were a 7 seed. BYU at a 6 seed at $13 million. Duke, a 1 seed. The only 1 seed in the top 5 of spending in NIL in Duke at $12 million, $8 million below the leader. Arkansas at number 4, also a number 4 seed at $11.5 million. Louisville, 6 seed at $10.5 million. Texas Tech, a 4 seed at $10.5 million. St. John's, $10.5 million at a 5 seed. Number 1, Michigan at 10.5. Number 4, Kansas at 9.5. Number 6, Tennessee at 9.5. You've got to go all the way to 11 before you get 3 of the 4 1 seeds. And that's not even all of the 1 seeds. You're still missing Florida. 3 of the 1 seeds. And then you look at the other money that is spread around there at teams that either are performing well or did perform well and are now out in the first weekend. Kentucky out in the first weekend. BYU out in the first weekend. Louisville out in the first weekend. Kansas out in the first weekend. I mean, so what? 50%? A little more than 50, a little under 50% is, you know, spending the NIL money, the absorbent NIL money that we're talking about. And they're the ones moving on. A little less than half, a little more than half. I don't know. The math is a little wonky to me because you have number 11 in there at Arizona. But so we can go ahead and say, well, NIL is ruining it. And I can understand the argument side of it where, well, you know, kids that were at the mid-majors, you know what I mean? They're not at the mid-majors anymore, or they were at the mid-majors for a year or so, and then they get brought up to the quote-unquote big leagues, the power conferences, with more NIL, with more experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's killing the low seeds. Well, if that's what's killing the low seeds, then why did, again, what was it, number 3 in spending on the season, Duke, have a fucking heart attack, have a hard 35 minutes? It was a hard 35 minutes for Duke against Siena in game 1. That was a lot closer than it ever should have been. And, Florida playing a lot of games closer than they should have been, getting sent home. And so, does it ruin the upsets? Yes, no. I'm going to go towards no. I mean, you had a heart attack there with Siena and Duke. VCU coming out of the woodworks and putting in work against UNC. I know that was one that a lot of people had, but still, UNC leading a lot of that game, fighting in that game, and then VCU being able to come back. I mean, I know you want to not really want to call it an upset with A&M and St. Mary's, but still, by the bracket standards, that is an upset. And then Kentucky getting bounced, only getting a 7 seed, and didn't have to deal with that many injuries over the season. And so, yeah, we are getting chalky. No, there isn't that one Cinderella, but it wasn't every year in March. It wasn't every year in March Madness that you had a Cinderella making it out of the first 2 rounds. You know what I mean? And so I get wanting to be nostalgic. I get wanting to have the quote unquote Cinderella, that really exciting story moving forward. And now we're looking at just a lot of chalk going into the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. Well, it was chalky as hell last year, chalky as hell the year before. I mean, yeah, every once in a while you've got those ones that can make the deep runs, but that's just not the norm when you're looking at this tournament, and it's not going to be the norm moving forward. Now, will this change? And that's the thing that I think no one puts any thought into. This could change in a year. Or if all it takes is I'll use Furman. All it takes is one graduate from Furman that's done well for themselves in life. One graduate who enjoyed seeing Furman in March. It was like, okay, that was actually a little bit of fun being able to watch my school in March. Yeah, we got, it was a close game against UConn. And yeah, that was a close game against UConn. I want to see it happen again. And then a call is made to the athletic director. Hey, how much money do you think it's going to cost me to see us in March again? That's all it takes. In today's wild west of what NIL and college sports is, that is all that it takes to really turn the tide of a team. Now, granted, yes, you got to have the coaching in there. You got to have the culture built and everything like that. But St. John's had been irrelevant for so many years. And then they go ahead and hire Patino. They put some money into NIL. And now here we are looking at a Sweet 16 St. John's team going up against Duke at and it's only a 6.5 point game. And I'll be completely honest with y'all, after watching Duke this weekend, I don't know how I'm feeling about Duke going up against the Johnnies. And then Michigan State and UConn, I don't know how they will feel going up against the Johnnies in the Elite 8. But again, it just takes one decision. It just takes one graduate, one alum. It just takes one AD move, one coaching move, and then all of it changes. And then the mid-major is not a mid-major anymore. And so, again, I understand the frustration, and I understand the thought behind NIL killing what is college sports and killing March Madness and killing. Yeah, I get it, but it's not completely accurate. This has still been a great tournament. There have been great games every single day. And at the end of the day, isn't that what you want? You want the best teams playing the best teams with the best games with the best players? That's what I want. And I think we are set up for a great Sweet 16 and Elite 8 coming up this weekend. I really do, from what I saw this weekend. And, Arizona looking every bit as dominant. Arkansas and Coach Cal proving why experience matters. Sean Miller in Texas doing the same as well. Purdue, in my opinion, playing shockingly better, I think, than expected. Michigan being dominant, but still a little bit of a scare there with with St. Louis. Alabama doing their business. Tennessee, Tennessee beating Miami, Ohio, shutting that down, and then shutting down Virginia as well. You got Iowa State next weekend. That's going to be solid. Illinois, Houston will be solid. Nebraska, Iowa. Yeah, that's going to be a good fucking game. I promise you. Michigan State, UConn, Duke, St. John's. That sounds like a great 2 days of basketball to me. And I don't know who else was going to argue with that. And I think that the tournament is working out how the tournament should. And if you really want to talk about what's going to kill this tournament, It's going to be if they decide to expand. And I know those conversations are still going around the NCAA world. It would be more money. It would be another weekend. It would be more teams, more exposure. But that's what would really kill the tournament. And then you want to talk about Cinderellas? Yeah, then we're living in a world where realistically you could see a 20 going up against a 7 in the Final Four, or however that math works out. But still, I don't think that's what any of us want to see. I really don't. And I still think you would end up more the same with the same teams that we're looking at. But again, any given day, and that's why you play the games. That's why March Madness is so great. That's why March is so exciting. But I'm not buying into the narrative of NIL killing March Madness. I'm not buying the narrative of NIL killing Cinderellas. I'm not buying into any of that. Because at the end of the day, it is the same rules that applied to everybody. It's just whether or not you got the people that can fork the cash. And college is very much in an MLB situation right now. The rich teams are going to win. But again, Indiana won a natty last year. Let's not forget that. Anyway, I'm stoked for this Sweet 16 action that's going to be coming at us this weekend. We'll have all my picks and everything available later this weekend. You're not going to want to miss that. All right, let's get to this, because this has been something that I've been following for a while, and it was about time that it got to this point, and I've been waiting for it to get to this point, and now we're finally getting to the point. Let me get the right tab up. Wall Street Journal and a lot of other sources and news reports coming out and saying that a pair of senators are introducing a law that would prohibit CFTC regulated entities like Kalshi and PolyMarket from listing contracts related to sporting events. So essentially saying, hey, these prediction markets that don't, that are predictions and you're trading and yada, 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 whatever big words you want to use to try to justify this, they can't list sports anymore. They can't have sports prediction markets, can't have futures, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people, and I get where it's coming from, a lot of people are saying, all right, yeah, okay, so, the politicians getting fed the money from the big casinos, and the big casinos aren't happy that these prediction markets are coming in on, their territory with gambling and everything like that. They're taking money out of their pockets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I get that argument. And I mean, I'm not into the politics world or anything like that. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if that wasn't happening and the casinos called up and said, hey, yeah, we got to get this shit taken care of. We got to get this shit shut down, and we got to get this shit shut down quick. We are sports. We are sports gambling. That is all that it should be. This is on top of Arizona filing lawsuits against Kalshi and PolyMarket, stating essentially that it's illegal gambling. Other states filing suit as well. And now the government's going to really get involved and write a law and do all that bullshit. Here's where I think it all goes down to, okay? When sports gambling was federally said, like, yeah, you guys are good, it was made a state's decision. It was made a state's decision on whether sports gambling, online sports gambling, in-person sports gambling in general, online casinos, et cetera, would be allowed. It was up to the states, and typically it was put to a vote to the people. I know I for sure voted yes for sports gambling in Arizona to be legalized. But the point being, the casinos weren't trying to dress it up as anything. They weren't trying to say, that it's not what it is. This is gambling. You could lose money. You could win money, but you could lose money. More likely, you're going to lose money, which is gambling. But they were very straightforward with it. They went through all the regulations for the states, all the state gaming regulatory agencies and everything like that. And as someone who's worked with in a sports book before, those agencies are on your ass. And I mean, and every state is different for what you can bet on, what you can't bet on. For example, Arizona is one of the states that you cannot bet on college props, no which way about it. You can bet on spreads, you can bet on totals, you cannot bet on any props whatsoever. Player props, excuse me. and other states like that as well. Illinois has different laws. Like, you got to drive in order to play online. You got to drive to the casino, show your ID, and then they allow you to play online. Other states just have you go in person. But the point being, it was a state decision, and it was a state decision on how it was regulated, what you were going to allow, what you weren't going to allow, et cetera, et cetera. And then Kalshi, PolyMarket, prediction markets in general, Robinhood now being a part of it, they all come in and say, well, we're not gambling, we're trading. This is essentially the stock market for people that don't want to gamble. This is not gambling. This is like the stock market. And I always found that argument to be extremely loose. And I the first time I heard about it, I was like, how is this a thing? This is gambling. This is absolutely the definition of gambling. I'm putting American currency on an outcome, on one side of an outcome that's a 50-50 outcome based on an event happening in the future. That is gambling. The definition of it, if you go ahead and look in the dictionary. And they come out and everything, and they didn't start with sports, they started with celebrity stuff. They started with politics. They started with the weather, traffic, et cetera, which, fine, whatever. To each their own. If that's what you're into, that's what you're into. You want to bet on, the color of Sydney Sweeney's hair at the Oscars or something, go ahead and bet on that. You want to bet on, I really don't know. I don't follow that stuff at all. This is where I need my wife to come in and tell me what's going on. But, you want to bet on that stuff, fine, go ahead. Most sports books, and again, it just depends on where you live and what the regulations say. Most sports books do have, the Emmys, the Oscars, Grammys, et cetera, and they offer lines on that and stuff. But the whole PolyMarket, Kalshi, like, it's a prediction market based off of where the public's at, yada, yada, yada. Fine, I can get behind that. It's when you start putting spreads. It's when you start doing touchdown scores. It's when you start doing very specific markets where it starts to cross into that sports gambling, especially aspect. And again, regardless, Kalshi, PolyMarket, even if you're betting on politics or whatever, it is gambling. You are not trading, you are gambling. Okay. And that is just a whole other pet peeve of mine, is these people online who's like, oh, well, I stopped gambling and I started trading. It's like, God, no, you're just gambling with extra steps. You're gambling without regulations. You're gambling without any safety net for the player, for the trader, if you really want to go that route. And opened itself up to some issues. There was that whole thing with Jake Paul where he sold his Pokemon card, and there was a PolyMarket open or on how much he was going to sell it for, and he did the over or the under or whatever he did, and he made a shit ton of money, not only on the sale but then on the market as well. Insider trading can be very easy with this. And now with the announcement and everything of the bipartisan law coming into play and everything, Kalshi has come out and said that they're to block athletes, politicians, and some celebrities from trading in certain markets and stuff. So essentially trying to say, yeah, okay, but we can do a better job at regulating who bets and who plays what than the sports books can, than the casinos can, and everything like that. Because, yeah, the casinos have had a lot of issues. Sports in general have had a lot of issues with insider gambling and insider information getting out, players throwing games, throwing props, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not dumb with this whatsoever. And Kalshi and PolyMarket are trying to say, well, we can take this extra step. We can take this extra step that the sports books and everyone else can't. Yeah, okay. Sure. If the casinos and everyone really wanted to, they absolutely could. So it's kind of a weak argument, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, Kalshi and PolyMarket are operating as gambling companies. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is gambling. And even if they, take off the sports or anything of like that, I believe there is a law. Don't quote me on this, but I believe there's a law that you can't bet on elections in America. And so that's a whole other set of issues. And I know that's very popular. You go overseas or something like that, and there's betting on elections and American elections especially. But still, it's an issue. And I do believe it's an issue that needs to get taken care of. There's absolutely no regulatory anything going on with Kalshi or PolyMarket or anything like that. And it leaves the players and the traders open to a certain amount of liability that they won't really have to cover. And not to mention the fact that I mean, the shit you can bet on Kalshi and PolyMarket is unbelievable. Like as a guy who bets on some pretty outrageous sports, who's excited for the PLL season coming up, who has a bet on the TGL final tonight, like I get it. Like I can bet on some pretty ridiculous things. But like, bro, we're talking about traffic, we're talking about weather, we're talking about, is the gopher going to come out today? Like, all of that shit. And you want to talk about some real degenerate gambling. That, like, if you bet on any of those markets, something should just flash on the app that says call the number, bro. If you're betting on traffic, come on, man. What are we doing? What are we doing here? It's disgusting. It's awful. And it needs to get taken care of. And I have no problem with it. If they want to be a gambling company, that's fine. I think they should just have to go through the normal regulations and everything. It makes no sense that they were just let to run around with free reign. Everyone, like, they had to know their time was coming. And now, is anything going to happen in the next 2 months, 6 months, 8 months? Who knows? That world works at about a snail's pace. At the end of the day, though, it doesn't shock me that this is happening with Kalshi. It doesn't shock me that this is happening. And I don't think at the end of the day it's going to be good for either of them. And yes, the gambling companies will win. Big Casino's going to win yet again. But at the end of the day, it just makes sense to me. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't help that I'm not a fan of the gambling markets or anything like that, of those prediction markets and such, but it's crazy. It's crazy. But that's all I have today. I streamed a lot this weekend, so I just wanted to hop on real quick and talk some shit. But hey, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Shout out to everyone here on Rumble, over on YouTube. Y'all are the best. If you like what we're cooking, please hit the like button, hit the follow button. It does help out a lot more than you know. I'll probably do an MLB preview coming up later this week, along with the Sweet 16. So keep an eye out for that. But with all that being said, hey, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of your Monday. Good luck. God bless. I'll see you next time on Degenerate Takes.